The Subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa will come to order. The purpose of this hearing is to discuss key issues for U.S. policy towards Lebanon. This includes efforts to strengthen state institutions, advance economic reform, and ensure Hezbollah's disarmament. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good morning. I want to begin by thanking my colleagues for being here today and our witnesses for taking the time to share their insights on this critically important issue, which frankly hasn't received sufficient scrutiny. Lebanon is at a crossroads. The November 2024 ceasefire agreement that brought conflict between Israel and Hezbollah to an end has provided the international community with an unprecedented opportunity for Lebanon. Right now, we have the chance to help this government break free of the shackles of Iran's malign influence. Hezbollah's influence is vastly diminished, thanks in large part to decisive Israeli action. But difficult choices now need to be made to permanently block Hezbollah's path to power. The stability, sovereignty, and long-term security of Lebanon depend on the Lebanese armed forces' ability to act as the sole legitimate military authority within the country. While the LAF has made initial progress towards ensuring Hezbollah's disarmament, implementation of the LAF's 5-phase disarmament plan has been haphazard at best. Moreover, now more than ever, it is absolutely vital that Lebanon delivers on long-promised economic and structural reforms, including those stipulated by the IMF, in a real and meaningful way. Since 2019, Lebanon's banking sector has all but collapsed, thanks in no small part due to prolific corruption. In that same period, the country's currency, the Lebanese pound, has lost over 97% of its value relative to the dollar, leading to unprecedented hyperinflation. This has given rise to a dollarized cash economy, one in which corruption thrives and Hezbollah's malign influence persists. So long as Lebanon's economy remains weak and unregulated, Hezbollah and their Iranian backers will retain access to cash flows. This will allow them to quietly rebuild their power base as well as their military arsenal that threatens the stability of the entire region. Delivering on economic and structural reforms cannot just be an option or a second thought. These are vital, necessary conditions to set Lebanon on the right path, free from Hezbollah's malign influence. Not least because successfully implementing these reforms will open up Lebanon's ability to access much-needed financial support from the international community, including in areas formerly under Hezbollah's control. To be clear, no one wants to see a power vacuum emerge along Lebanon's border with Israel. I think we can all recognize how important it is for the Lebanese state to step up and start to deliver basic services there. But reinvesting in the same failed system that enabled Hezbollah's rise would be pure insanity. We'd merely be providing Hezbollah with an open door to undermine stability across the region at the expense of Lebanon's future. The international community needs to meet the moment. We cannot lose sight of the need to ensure the government fully delivers on long-pledged reforms. The stakes are too high. Ultimately, our goal is to ensure that American policy supports long-term stability and security across the Middle East, and that can only be achieved by closing the financial and regulatory loopholes that have allowed Hezbollah and its Iranian backers to thrive for far too long. I look forward to the day when these goals come to fruition, where Lebanon is a true partner in the Middle East, where they can join the Abraham Accords and seek normalization. And with that, I now recognize the ranking member for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Since its founding in 1982, Hezbollah, with Iran's backing, has waged a campaign of terror against the United States, against Israel, and against the people of Lebanon that has been deeply destructive for the entire region. Just a year after its founding, Hezbollah perpetrated the 1983 Beirut Marine barracks bombings, murdering 241 brave U.S. service members, as well as 58 French military personnel. For decades, Lebanon has had to deal with this diminution of its own sovereignty. And Hezbollah has targeted Americans Israelis, and Jewish communities abroad, such as the 1994 bombing of the AMIA Jewish Community Center in Buenos Aires, Argentina, which killed 85 innocent people. Joining the Hamas massacre of October 7th, Hezbollah launched thousands of rockets against Israeli civilians, bringing Lebanon into an unnecessary conflict. Fortunately, however, and surprising some of the leaders of Hamas, Hezbollah did not use all of its military power at the outset of the Hamas war against Israel. Hezbollah's terror campaign has contributed to the decline of Lebanon from what was once the Paris of the East to a country suffering from prolonged economic and institutional collapse. And it is the Lebanese people who paid the price. However, there is an opportunity for a new day in Lebanon, thanks to the ITF taking out Hezbollah's arch-terrorist Nasrallah in September of 2024, and the toppling of the Assad regime, the significant weakening of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the creation of a new Lebanese government. There is historic opportunity in Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah and remove its grip on the Lebanese state, and particularly southern Lebanon. That window of opportunity, however, is narrow. Hezbollah is working hard to rebuild, rearm, and to reconstitute itself as a major terrorist organization. Yet at a time when there is historic opportunity to solidify American security interests by weakening Hezbollah's grip on Lebanon, there is a lack of urgency and a lack of the necessary support to anti-Hezbollah actors by the Trump administration. As part of dismantling the U.S. foreign assistance program, the Trump administration has cut non-security funding that the U.S. has historically provided to Lebanon. In practice, that means that instead of coordinating U.S. support to help stabilize the government that is making progress on U.S. interests, the administration began providing less support to Lebanon at the exact moment when this government was formed in February 2025. Comments by Trump administration special envoy have often sent the wrong signals, particularly when special envoy Tom Barrack downplayed Hezbollah and described it as a political party that is also has a, let me quote him exactly, a political party that also has a militant aspect to it. As the new Lebanese government considers necessary reforms and Lebanese armed forces make gains again toward Hezbollah disarmament, this needs to continue, and the United States must seize this historic opportunity to shore up security, economic, and humanitarian assistance in support of the new Lebanese government and Lebanese armed forces. Such assistance, of course, must be contingent on continued timely progress on disarming Hezbollah and implementing necessary financial and election reforms, particularly ahead of the parliamentary elections this year, that could either strengthen or undermine the anti-Hezbollah government. Of course, all support must be tied to real progress on disarmament of Hezbollah, including going after weapons that are hidden in private residences in the south and beginning disarmament north of the Litani River. We must make no mistake, Hezbollah is aggressively working to rearm and reconstitute. The United States, Lebanon, and the region have a generational opportunity in this moment to keep Hezbollah weakened, and we should not squander that opportunity. I yield back.
Thank you to the ranking member. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. We are pleased to have a distinguished panel of witnesses before us today on this important topic. The Honorable David Schenker, the Taube Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Ms. Hanin Ghaddar, the Friedmann Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and Ms. Dana Stroul, the Director of Research and the Shelly and Michael Kassen Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. This committee recognizes the importance of the issues before us and is grateful to have you here to speak with us today. Your full statements will be made part of the record, and I'll ask each of you to keep your spoken remarks to 5 minutes in order to allow time for member questions. I now recognize Mr. Schenker for an opening statement.
Chairman Lawler, Ranking Member Sherman, it's an honor to testify before you today on U.S. policy on Lebanon and the ongoing efforts to disarm Hezbollah. Today marks the 5th anniversary of the murder of Lokman Saleem. Saleem was an outspoken Lebanese critic of Hezbollah, an analyst, polemicist, historian, and filmmaker who ran a U.S.-funded NGO teaching Shiite women English. He was assassinated in South Lebanon in 2021, almost certainly by a Hezbollah hit squad. He was a dear friend of mine. Lokman is just one of the dozens, if not hundreds, of Lebanese victims of Hezbollah. There are thousands more in Syria and many in Israel as well. Israel's campaign in 2024 to degrade Hezbollah provided Lebanon with an unprecedented opportunity to restore state sovereignty. President Aoun and Prime Minister Salam appear to have embraced this opportunity to end Hezbollah's decades-long domination and to implement reforms. The November 24 ceasefire agreement is going relatively well. With Hezbollah's permission and with intelligence information provided by Israel and the United States, the LAF has collected a lot of weapons in the south, but it took 7 months for the government to make the decision to do so, and the pace of disarmament is too slow. Hezbollah is obstructing operations, and there have been reports of LAF collaboration with the organization. The government and the LAF also remain extremely deferential to Hezbollah. Meanwhile, Israel is filling the gap. A division of labor has emerged where Israel is targeting Hezbollah and its assets, the assets and the individuals that the LAF can't or won't. The South is not yet completed, and disarmament in the North will be even more challenging given Hezbollah's opposition. LAF reticence to confront Hezbollah is understandable, given its track record of murdering Lebanese, including LAF soldiers. The LAF needs salary support and continued flow of U.S. equipment. But at this point, the question of disarmament is not a matter of capability, but of will. Alas, disarmament is necessary but insufficient to end Hezbollah's domination and establish state sovereignty. Hezbollah thrives amidst Lebanon's financial crisis and benefits from the state's systemic corruption. Economic and political reforms are urgently required to restore confidence in the banks and curtail the cash economy. The government has made some headway, but much more needs to be done. No doubt, disarmament is Washington's #1 priority, but reform shouldn't be an afterthought. The state will not end Hezbollah's chokehold on the country without reform. To help make Lebanon great again, the Trump administration should, 1, build a bigger international coalition against Hezbollah. The EU has designated the IRGC. Washington should press its partners to designate the entirety of this IRGC proxy. 2, cleanse the LAF and security institutions of Hezbollah. Lebanese institutions continue to collaborate, collude, and deconflict with Hezbollah, undermining disarmament. Officials need to be removed. 3, support the LAF based on performance. Washington should stand by the LAF as it carries out its mission. The LAF can and should do more, but the U.S. support should be conditioned on performance. The division of labor is working. Unless and until the LAF makes serious progress on disarmament, Israel will remain a partner in the disarmament project, helping Lebanon to meet its ceasefire obligations. Israel should, if the LAF makes progress, Israel should withdraw from positions it occupies in Lebanon. 6, condition reconstruction on disarmament. Much of the South was destroyed during Hezbollah's war on Israel, but the war isn't over yet. Premature reconstruction will undermine disarmament, and rebuilt areas are likely to be destroyed again. 7, exclude Hezbollah from the reconstruction process. In 2006, Hezbollah exploited reconstruction to embed military assets in civilian centers. This mistake should not be repeated. 8, don't perpetuate corruption during reconstruction. Inexplicably, Beirut and the World Bank are channeling reconstruction funds through the Council for Development and Construction, Nabi Berri's egregiously corrupt organization. This is also a mistake. And last, it's time to sanction Lebanese again. Washington should help Lebanon to help itself by resuming the practice of designating corrupt Lebanese and those who obstruct reform and impede progress toward reform in the state. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to do and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schenker. I now recognize Ms. Ghaddar for an opening statement.
Chairman Lofer, Ranking Member Sherman, and distinguished members of the Subcommittee, thank you very much for this opportunity. My central argument is simple. Hezbollah is not sustained by weapons alone. It survives through an economic and political ecosystem that protects cash flows, penetrates state institutions, and enables military rebuilding. Even in a best-case scenario, where Hezbollah were to surrender all its weapons tomorrow, the group would still retain the capacity to rebuild from scratch. As long as its ties to Iran remain intact, and as long as its ecosystem of power endures, Hezbollah will survive, regenerate, and rearm. Today, Hezbollah is operating in a survival mode. Despite severe losses, it has not collapsed because it has redirected its efforts toward protecting the financial and political systems that generate money and immunity. The most important of these systems is Lebanon's cash economy. Since the country's financial collapse in 2020, the banking sector has been replaced by an unregulated, cash-based financial system dominated by money services businesses, exchange houses, and informal transfer networks. This transformation has fundamentally altered the counterterrorism landscape. Cash is harder to trace, easier to launder, and far more difficult to regulate than the formal banking system Hezbollah once relied on. Hezbollah and Iran have fully exploited this environment. Funds generated abroad from oil sales, front companies, and private networks are moved through the exchange houses and informal systems and then injected into Lebanon outside of effective oversight. At the same time, Hezbollah benefits from the proliferation of domestic cash businesses and commercial fronts that blend illicit activity with legitimate commerce. In this environment, terrorism financing becomes indistinguishable from the broader economy and accountability collapses. This cash ecosystem is reinforced by institutional capture. Hezbollah and its allies continue to secure key appointments inside the institutions that affect borders, customs, security, and public spending. As a result, disarmament efforts faced a structural problem. Weapons can be collected, but money keeps flowing. Disarmament without dismantling the cash economy and the institutional shield around it will not be durable. It will simply buy time. On disarmament, Lebanese leaders have articulated the right principle. A state monopoly on arms, but words are not strategy. The absence of a timeline beyond the initial phase south of Litani has produced a de facto freeze. The Lebanese armed forces will not initiate confrontation, and Hezbollah will not voluntarily disarm. Without external pressure and incentives, the process could stall. The United States has leverage to change this dynamic by requiring the Lebanese government and the LAF to submit a plan for the rest of the phases with clear deadlines, objectives, and deliverables. Also, the U.S. security assistance should be delivered promptly but sequenced, with additional support tied to concrete progress north of Litani. At the same time, the United States should treat Lebanon's economy as a national security battlefield. Treasury advisories and sanctions should escalate against money service businesses and individuals facilitating Hezbollah's cash network. Reform pressure must extend to include custom authorities, unreformed state entities, such as the Council of the South, which is responsible for reconstruction, and the judiciary. Impunity remains Hezbollah's greatest political asset. As the 2026 parliamentary elections approach, Hezbollah will seek to delay disarmament, suppress dissent, and block mechanisms that threaten its dominance. Targeted sanctions and diplomatic pressure against those who use violence, obstruct reforms, and undermine electoral integrity are essential. Finally, the United States should recognize that peace between Lebanon and Israel is not separate from this effort. It is what sustains it over time. Hezbollah's military defeat has shattered the mythology of resistance. The idea of peace is no longer taboo. Peace raises the political cost of rearmament, strengthens state legitimacy, unlocks economic recovery, and deprives Hezbollah of its core justification. Without a credible peace horizon, disarmament and economic reform will be temporary. With one, they become structural. In short, dismantling Hezbollah's economic ecosystem is key to sustainable disarmament, and peace is what locks it in. Lebanon is closer to that moment than many may assume, but only if U.S. policy is firm, comprehensive, and willing to raise the cost of obstruction. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ghaddar. I now recognize Ms. Stroul for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Lawler, Ranking Member Sherman, and members of the committee. I could not agree more with your opening statements about the historic and time-limited opportunity that the current situation in Lebanon represents for the United States and regional engagement. To take a broader scope, there are multiple shifts at the regional and state level that have converged to create this opportunity. First, as you heard from my colleagues, Hezbollah is profoundly weakened. The group no longer imposes a stranglehold on Lebanon's sovereignty, but the process of disarming the Iran-backed terror group is incomplete and insufficient without addressing the political, social, and economic system within which Hezbollah has thrived. Second, the Iranian regime is profoundly weakened. It cannot currently sustain the regional ecosystem in which its proxies like Hezbollah and others have undermined Arab governments, specifically in Lebanon, and held back the Lebanese people from realizing their own aspirations for sovereignty. And third, there is promising leadership in Beirut. Under the leadership of President Joseph Aoun and Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, the government formed in early 2025 is saying the right things and doing some of the right things. This should be vigorously encouraged while demanding more. For the past year, U.S. policy has focused on Hezbollah disarmament, which is critical, but on its own is only a partial strategy. In order to consolidate the gains from Hezbollah's weakness, the United States must broaden its engagement beyond the security file. Importantly, we must do more to engage other governments meddling in Lebanon's messy politics ahead of the upcoming parliamentary elections and offering assistance without conditions. Briefly, I want to make a series of recommendations with my remaining time. On security assistance, U.S. policy to support the LAF with funding and equipment should continue, but with conditions. The LAF have made important progress in implementing the first phase of the ceasefire. Now that work must be accelerated. Hezbollah is rebuilding, increasing its indigenous weapons production, and its illicit regional networks still exist. There are two near-term opportunities to underscore U.S. focus on Hezbollah's disarmament while supporting the LAF. First is the visit this week of the LAF Commander Rudolf Heikel, and second is the French-hosted conference in early March. The message should be that the United States has expectations for the LAF's performance and transparency. Continued assistance is important, but not assured without continued performance. Second, on elections. The U.S. must do more than insist that elections take place on time. Signaling U.S. interest in a parliamentary outcome that demonstrates a break with the pre-October 7th governmental paralysis is critical. The worst-case outcome would be a parliamentary makeup that leaves in place Hezbollah-affiliated politicians. In the absence of visible leadership on this issue, the risk is the internationalization of Lebanon and counterproductive external meddling. The United States should make clear it will not support a government that does not prioritize the needs of all Lebanese and fails to back the mandate of Lebanon's president to bring all weapons under state control. On reconstruction, it is time to articulate our expectations for U.S. support that expands beyond the security file. Washington should pair concrete steps on Hezbollah's disarmament with support for reconstruction, quick impact projects, and longer-term livelihood programs to assure an inclusive post-Hezbollah future. Without something tangible on the table from the United States, we are ceding influence to others and risk re-empowering ministries and local government that are still under Hezbollah influence. And finally, leadership. If the current president of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, a former U.S. military detainee from Iraq and formerly designated al-Qaeda affiliate, can be hosted in the White House with a warm embrace, surely we can find time for President Aoun. Signaling U.S. support for President Aoun this year is important if we want to see progress and further reform. And finally, on Israel, this is a government who is sincere in wanting to maintain dialogue and move forward toward eventual peace with Israel. This is something that the United States plays a continuous and important role in and should encourage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stroul. I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter testimony from the President of the American Lebanon Peace Advancement Council into the record. So ordered. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. In recent months, there has been optimism about Lebanon joining the Abraham Accords in the future. What needs to happen before this can be a real conversation? Ms. Ghaddar.
Thank you. So there are a number of steps that can be done while Lebanon and Israel start a dialogue. One of the main things that needs to be done today, there is basically easing Lebanon's anti-normalization law, which is basically bans dialogue between Lebanon and Lebanese and Israeli citizens. This one, at least in practice, what matters because they criminalize people-to-people contact and protect Hezbollah's forever war narrative. In order to reach a point where people can actually start conversing freely about peace, we need to start looking at this law. And one way of doing it, the United States should apply both pressure and incentives to encourage restraint in enforcement and open space for civic engagement, economic integration, and regional normalization. One of the tools that can be used is make sure that the Hezbollah and its allies in the state institutions do not actually use this law and use all the punitive tools, including sanctions, against everyone in the judicial system that would enforce the anti-normalization law. There are many things that can be discussed between Lebanon and Israel as disarmament continue. One of them is economic cooperation, which is today a big discussion in Lebanon when the Trump administration mentioned the economic zone in south of Lebanon on the border between Lebanon and Israel. This is a big opportunity that can lead also to this kind of agreement.
Ms. Ghaddar, the Treasury Department has reported that the IRGC has transferred over $1 billion to Hezbollah since January 2025. Mm-hmm. What are the primary means by which Hezbollah and its Iranian backers maintain access to these cash flows? And what role do unrelated or unlicensed money exchanges and exchange companies in Lebanon play in sustaining Hezbollah's illicit financial networks?
Yes. Thank you very much for this question. Hezbollah has been working very hard on its economic infrastructure and the cash economy. The estimation in general of the cash economy after the collapse of 2022 is around $18 billion. Not all of it is Hezbollah or illicit financing, but it constitutes a good infrastructure for Hezbollah to move, store money and make money. So they use this economy, the cash economy, which is basically the only economy functioning in Lebanon today, in order to bring money from abroad, especially that the customs in Lebanon are still not very much monitored. They have a lot of their allies appointed in very high-rank custom and border appointments. They ease smuggling from Syria to Lebanon from all points of entries. The airport today is very much monitored, but the ports are not. So customs is a very big thing here. It's very important to note also that Hezbollah runs a lot of businesses, including construction, telecommunications, gas stations, supermarkets, pharmaceutical sectors. And they also use a lot of cash companies that are, there are 4 cash companies, maybe more now, that have replaced 60 banks in Lebanon. Some of them have informal deals with the Lebanese government, and some of them have licenses, but they are not monitored. These companies should be more monitored. There should be observation. There should be some kind of treasury warnings, at least before sanctions, to these companies to make sure that Hezbollah cannot use them, because this is where they're making and moving their money. So this is one of the things that can be done.
Thank you. Mr. Schenker, how would you characterize the Lebanon Armed Forces' overall performance in 2025? And do you agree with the LAF's assertion that it has established total control south of the Litani River?
Thank you, Chairman. The LAF has not established total control of the south of Lebanon. It has a presence in Lebanon that it didn't have prior to November 2024, let's say 7 months after that. It is now present, and it is, as I say, responsive to tasking. When the mechanism informs the LAF of intelligence information about where weapons may be, arms caches, things that should check out, it responds. But it does not respond when it is obstructed. So oftentimes groups of women will be brought out to prevent the LAF from going into a site. They'll come back, the weapons will be gone. So they are present, but they are not in control. Hezbollah still controls the region. And frankly, the LAF has not met what the president promised in the beginning of the ceasefire, that there would be 10,000 LAF troops in the south. There should probably be even more, given the nature of the threat.
To that end, what is your assessment of their capacity and political will to pursue Hezbollah's disarmament in this area?
So there are something like 75,000 men and women under arms in the LAF. Granted, they are underpaid. The currency has been devaluated 95, 97%. They have equipment, they have arms. Hezbollah has been degraded. This is not a matter of capability, right? They need support, salary support, fuel, et cetera, operating costs. But they have weapons, they have individuals. CENTCOM long ago classified the LAF as pound for pound the best Arab army, the soldier for soldier. What they're lacking is, to a large degree, until now, the political will. And this is risky because they have been threatened with clashes, attacks, and of course 6 LAF soldiers were killed near the very beginning of the start of this campaign to disarm them with a booby trap by Hezbollah. So understandably reticent, but this is the nature of the business. When you're in government, you have to take these tough decisions.
Okay, my time has expired. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Sherman, for about 7 minutes.
Hezbollah perfected cash smuggling, informal financial transactions over decades. But we are in a new decade where cryptocurrency also can fill this role. To what extent is Hezbollah using cryptocurrency to deal with its money laundering and financial transactions?
Thank you. To my information, they definitely are using cryptocurrency in Lebanon. They're focusing a lot on cryptocurrency because they understand that most of the pressure is coming today on the cash flow, their cash flow, and especially that their cash flow has been affected today by they lost Syria, they're losing Venezuela, they're afraid they're going to lose Iran. So there's a lot of cash flow, hard currency flow that they're not getting anymore. And they're worried about, they might have gotten 1 billion this year, but 1 billion is definitely not enough for this group in order to not only pay salaries and provide benefits, but also provide compensation and rent for those who lost their homes, and also for reconstruction. So the cash is not happening.
And I might add, and graft for the top leaders as well, isn't he?
Yes, absolutely.
Expensive part of Hezbollah's
absolutely.
operation.
So
I'm going
not
to interrupt you there. I don't know if the other witnesses have anything more specific to say about crypto, so I'm going to go on to Mr. Schechter. Representative Tenney and I have been leading an effort here in Congress that is to try to push Europe to designate the Iran Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. We've long championed that. There are others who have, of course, pushed the EU, and it looks like that will happen. France has taken an interest in Lebanon for well over a century and played a substantial role in Lebanon for well over 100 years. Do you see any potential to build on the momentum of the EU designating the IRGC and get France to change its policy and designate all of Hezbollah, not just the military wing, as a terrorist organization?
Thanks for the question, Representative Sherman. France has long viewed Hezbollah as having two wings, the political wing and the military wing, and this is a useful carve-out for their engagement with Lebanon. To be fair, that same formulation is what Tom Barak, the special envoy of the administration, has used, right? He said it's a political party, as he said earlier, with a militia or with a militant element. No, this is a terrorist organization. It's a bird. It needs both wings to fly, right? And so whether France will go in that direction, I think it's going to be a stretch for them. For me, it's obvious, but France likes to have, I think, all doors open with Lebanon, and this would close off doors for them, certainly, and perhaps ultimately, like Americans, put their people on the ground at risk. So I don't think they're going to be so inclined to take that step.
Ms. Stroul, what tools does the U.S. have to incentivize faster, more aggressive action on Hezbollah disarmament from the Lebanese government and armed forces?
Thank you for the question. So the United States has a variety of tools. The one that it has relied on for years before October 7th and now with the ceasefire is security assistance, both security aid like FMF, equipping, training, and the presidential drawdowns of U.S. military equipment to support the LAF. It can also support the disarmament process through providing actionable intelligence, through working through the U.S. military mechanism with significant leadership to both verify the steps the LAF have taken and validate when certain steps are not taken, which, as you know, with the November 2024 ceasefire, there's a side agreement where the United States acknowledged that Israel would continue to take military action in Lebanon even though there was a ceasefire, if it saw concerning Hezbollah activity, which has continued to this day. And again, there, the U.S. military role is quite important.
I'm going to try to sneak in one more question. Can any of our witnesses identify specific additional sanctions measures, including secondary sanctions on financial entities that would target Hezbollah's financial networks? Any specific advice on additional sanctions?
Yes, absolutely. On the, in addition to the financial companies that I mentioned before that are helping Hezbollah with the cash flow, there are definitely additional sanctions that need to be made, especially in the judicial system. Hezbollah has been doing what it needs to be done because it has immunity, because it has never been held accountable, whether for assassinations, money laundering, illicit activities, drug production, you name it. Today, for example, the biggest drug dealer in Lebanon, Nuh Zayter, has been released, and the government didn't do anything to keep him. They have been never held accountable in Lebanon. Judiciary system definitely needs to be targeted with sanctions. There are certain judges that need to be targeted, and the only way to stop Hezbollah is to hold them accountable for their crimes.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, the ranking member. I now recognize Representative Zinke for 5 minutes.
Thank you. We talked about Hezbollah. Talk to me about the Muslim Brotherhood. How influential is the Muslim Brotherhood? And David, if you'd.
Certainly, Lebanon was pleased with the U.S. designation of the Muslim Brotherhood in the north of Lebanon. This is an increasingly important actor and believed to be backed in part by Turkey, but Qatar as well.
So the money would go from Qatar to Turkey and then distributed? Is that a fair assessment?
I believe so. In any event, they've not done particularly well on the nationwide elections in Lebanon historically, and even in municipal elections. But they're appear to be making slow but steady progress and gaining adherence.
Ma'am?
Yeah, I agree totally with David. Turkey and Qatar play a very bad role in Lebanon in terms of supporting Muslim Brotherhood. And what I would add to that is that before even October 7, and we witnessed this during the war between Hezbollah and Israel, the Muslim Brotherhood branch in Lebanon, which is called Al-Jama'ah al-Islamiyya, has fought with Hezbollah during the war against Israel. So today they are seeing them, Hezbollah sees the Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon as a strategic ally, and I will not be surprised if they join them or strategically align with them during the next parliamentary elections because they need more allies. Today, the Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon, that specific branch, during their last internal elections, the Sinwar, basically the Hamas branch, won, and this is what drives them today. I would say that the Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon, that branch specifically, is Hamas, the Lebanese Hamas branch, and it's a very dangerous phenomenon. I'm very glad that you asked about this because it's evolving and they're getting stronger with the money that is flowing in and Hezbollah's alliance.
Ma'am?
I would add this is why I think more U.S. attention is needed, or the risk is the internationalization of external meddling in Lebanon. So what we've seen in the past year is significant announcements of financial assistance for reconstruction from the government of Qatar. We've seen more Turkish involvement in Lebanon and others, but this is without conditions and without the United States putting anything on the table other than security support for the left. So while very important, we need to broaden and expand our engagement in Lebanon in order to counter these concerning trends and developments.
And second question, should there be a regime change in Iran, how would that affect Lebanon?
Oh, well, regime change in Iran would change everything in Lebanon. Lebanon is a country that has been occupied by Iran since the mid-'80s. A proxy army of Iran has dominated the country's politics and made decisions of war and peace and murdered countless numbers of Lebanese citizens over these years. Without the support, the ideological support, the financial support, the provision of weapons, Hezbollah would be cut down to size. Now, Hezbollah is entrepreneurial, right? They sell Captagon, they have car dealerships, they have economics, they have foreign supporters who send them money. Iran has been the key node, and without this regime, Hezbollah wouldn't disappear, but it would wither on the vine.
Do you share that same assessment?
I do, because I believe also that Hezbollah is not just another proxy of Iran in the region. It's not like the Iraqi Shia militias. Hezbollah is actually part of the Quds Force, which is part of the IRGC. It is really an organic part of it. So when something changes there, Hezbollah will immediately and directly be affected before other proxies. They do have their own sources of funding that I talked about earlier, but the impact would be, one, on their arms, definitely, but two, I think it would also reverberate very, very directly to the Shia community, which is today their main strength in Lebanon. If the Shia community today wakes up tomorrow with a big regime change in Iran and Hezbollah totally weakened, even if it's still present, this will impact the elections, the upcoming parliamentary elections, and then we can see some kind of independent, non-Hezbollah penetration in the parliament. Otherwise, if the Iranian regime does not fall and nothing really changes, Hezbollah might be able, with the presence of their arms and their ties to the regime, to win all 27 Shia seats in the next parliament, which is very, very dangerous if it continues. It's as if October 7 didn't happen, as if the war didn't happen. So this is very, very important.
I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zinke. I now recognize Representative Latimer for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In deference to the time and my other colleagues, one very simple question, and I'd like each of you to answer it. Can you identify 2 or 3 specific things that you'd like to see the United States do to address this?
Sorry, to
address this problem, one or two or three specific things that we can do, United States government, to address the problem that you've identified.
Yeah, I think first, condition the funding, right, to actually really press and set benchmarks for LAF performance. Lebanon has a tendency to kick the can down the road, defer difficult decisions. They did so with disarmament in the south. I fear they will do so in the north, and every day Hezbollah continues its attempts to rearm. It's necessary to have some sort of timeline and benchmarks with this. The other is to, I think that would be a good start. It's always hard to go first. But no, listen, I think the conditioning of the funding is most important. I think it's also important to really, I think, clean house within the LAF and the other security forces in the country. Hezbollah, this disarmament is being disrupted by collaborators, by collusion, by deconfliction. It's hard enough to do this work without being undermined from the inside. And I think the U.S. Has insight into the LAF. Israel has insight into the LAF. The LAF should take it upon itself. I'm not talking about Baathification here. What I'm talking about is actually...
With no disrespect intended, I want to make sure everybody answers it. I have no other questions in my 5 minutes. So we have conditioned funding and clean up the LAF.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Same question?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, for everybody.
So I agree with David, definitely. I would add 3 more, which is the financial warnings and sanctions that I talked about earlier. Definitely issue for the Treasury to issue advisories and sanctions against corrupt politicians, cash companies that are helping Hezbollah with the cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. It's all in my written testimony. I can go further later. But to make sure I go to the second one, the judiciary reform. For me, this is one of the most important reforms that can be made in Lebanon because, one, it holds Hezbollah accountable. If the judiciary is reformed, then the judiciary system in Lebanon can hold Hezbollah accountable, protect dissident and free speech, and make sure that those who are helping Hezbollah with their shadow economy are held accountable. But last but not least, there's a very rare opportunity in Lebanon today to make sure, very rare opportunity today to actually start the peace process between Lebanon and Israel, and for Lebanon to join the Abraham Accords because, one, it is ready. Everyone in Lebanon wants to end war, and that's the only way to sustain a ceasefire for a very long term. And the Lebanese street is ready. Peace is no longer taboo, and there will be some dissent, but I would say it's a rare opportunity, and people should start thinking about starting this process between Lebanon and Israel. It's important to do it now.
Okay, just so I summarize, this is how we leverage our funding to accomplish each of these bullets that you've mentioned. It's our leveraging of funding that you're advocating for to make these things happen. In what little time I have left, ma'am.
Two different comments from my colleagues. The first is we risk locking ourselves in a trap of no reconstruction until disarmament is complete of Hezbollah. I think we in the United States can be more nuanced in our policy approach here. If we do not proactively articulate the conditions and what reconstruction, our role and our support package would look like, there's no reason for the Lebanese people to expect more from us, and the risk is that they think we are only focused on Hezbollah's disarmament. So we don't need to pledge assistance and start transferring it now, but we can articulate the conditions and our expectations for what our support for reconstruction, our advocacy with international financial institutions, and our willingness to convene other external actors that are also interested in Lebanon's reconstruction. And secondly, expand the U.S. policy team. We've had a rotation of different U.S. Senior envoys, all of which have done very important work. The current U.S. ambassador in Beirut, Michael Issa, is doing very important work. But what we need right now is technical assistance experts, diplomats, the very people that are not working and empowered to do their jobs in the State Department and the dismantled U.S. Agency for International Development.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Latimer. I now recognize Representative Schneider for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for being here. It's good to see the Washington Institute so well represented. Mr. Schenker, in your opening remarks, you noted that I think what you said exactly is perhaps expectations were too high, but the first year of the administration was a disappointment. My first question for the panel is, despite the disappointments, are there still reasons for optimism?
Yeah, I've got a quick answer. Yes, I think there are reasons for optimism. The Lebanese are resilient people, and they've got a team in place that is unusual, actually unprecedented, not corrupt at the highest levels, committed to reform, Western-oriented, and understand that this opportunity may be fleeting. This is unusual, and it may be very fleeting because we have elections coming up.
Hold that thought, because I'm going to come back to it. That's where I'm going. Ms. Ghaddar.
Definitely, 100% more than any time before, because simply that internally, as my colleague David said, that there are certain people that you can work with. The new government is definitely not ideal. There are so many mistakes that they've done, but it's better than the ones before it. So it's a government that you can work with. The president as well, it's someone that you can work with. But again, there should be communication, direct communication, clear communication, as my colleague Dana said. This is very important. Two, the region is changing. The links that Hezbollah had through Syria today in Iran and Venezuela is changing. They are losing every day a big ally, economic ally, political allies, and they are losing allies in Lebanon as well. So definitely it's an opportunity if we use it.
Ms. Stroul.
Absolutely. As a longtime follower of U.S. policy toward Lebanon, to imagine a situation in which Hezbollah is so weakened politically, economically, and from a security perspective, and we have a willing partner in the political leadership in Beirut who is saying the right things and working to do the right things on disarmament, contemplating publicly the potential for peace with Israel. This is not any policy opportunity that before October 7th we could have imagined. Tremendous reason for hope.
So I'm going to try to frame what's really a statement into the form of a question. But we've defined, as you said, there's this moment, there's reasons for optimism, but the moment could be fleeting. And so are there ways that we can create guardrails to keep them focused on the moment, to provide stepping stones to help them get to where they need to go, to identify milestones so we can measure progress along the way, and to put backstops so they don't fall back to where they were, but we keep helping them move forward. That's my broad question, and I've got a minute 50 left. Maybe I'll go the other direction. Ms. Stroul.
Absolutely. The U.S. policy approach should be a combination of incentives tied with conditions for performance and transparency. So a lot of the announcements we see from the left right now are number of houses cleared, number of weapons seized, these sorts of issues. Important, but that is not the only benchmark for performance we should be looking at. What happens to the weapons once they're disposed of? What are we doing to dry up the illicit networks of support? What are we doing to stop the rebuilding? But beyond the security file, what are our expectations for the reform agenda with this current government in Beirut? What are our expectations for a free, fair, and credible electoral cycle? What are our expectations for reconstruction that does not re-empower corrupt Hezbollah-affiliated institutions in Lebanon?
Ms. Ghaddar.
Very briefly, I'm not going to repeat what my colleagues said, and I agree with them 100%. It's very important to look, even within the security apparatus, there are certain things that needs to be monitored as well, including points of entry, border control. In addition to the airport, the port, the borders with Syria needs to be demarcated, which hasn't happened yet. There are a lot of smuggling happening. The cash economy is not monitored, unregulated. These are things that are not very difficult to handle, but you need to have a strategy in place. And I can go into details, but it's all in my written testimony. You can look at that.
Thank you. And Mr. Schenker, I'll give you the last word.
Three quick points. One, we should be sanctioning leaders right now. There is a sense of urgency. Leaders that are in parliament, elsewhere, who are obstructing reform, they should be sanctioned, period. We should be looking at the electoral law, talking with Lebanese about how they're disenfranchising 4 or 8 million Lebanese who are living abroad. And that will have a real impact on whether this government stays or whether it goes or whether we go back to business or as usual. Finally, in this period of time when money is flowing into Lebanon, they just passed their budget, we should really be quite critical of providing the provision of funding to the same old corrupt organizations that we know are corrupt. This is not helping matters.
Thank you. I appreciate the extended time. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Representative Kane for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our distinguished witnesses for being here today. Stability in Lebanon is critical to safety and security throughout the eastern Mediterranean. As Iran-backed Hezbollah maintains a stronghold in Lebanon, it is crucial that the United States examine various means to continue dismantling Hezbollah. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses regarding how America can most effectively partner with our allies throughout the eastern Mediterranean to dismantle Hezbollah and to secure peace in the Middle East. Mr. Schenker, Hezbollah has long been a proxy of Iran, targeting America's ally Israel in the Middle East. In your testimony, you stated that Israel is filling an important gap, preventing Hezbollah from rearming and targeting militia locations and personnel the LAF deems too sensitive to engage. Can you share how the partnership between Israel and the Lebanese armed forces is critical to dismantling Hezbollah?
Absolutely. They are critical. The work that Israel is doing, Lebanon would look a whole lot different without what's happening now, what has happened since the ceasefire. There hasn't really been a ceasefire. There's been a less fire, right? A more concentrated targeting by Israel. And the Lebanese Armed Forces is doing work, but they're just not going to be able to do all the work. And so while I think many in the government of Lebanon complain about this, I know that many quietly in the security apparatus of Lebanon, the military, are very pleased that this is happening. And this can continue indefinitely. I hope it doesn't have to.
Ms. Ghaddar, the 3+1 partnership between the United States, Israel, Greece, and the Republic of Cyprus is an important alliance in efforts to counter terrorism across the eastern Mediterranean. The American Hellenic Israel Eastern Mediterranean Counterterrorism and Maritime Security Partnership Act, which I co-led with bipartisan colleagues, recognizes the importance of working with American partners such as Greece, Cyprus, and Israel to counter terrorism. How do you believe the 3+1 partnership can best be leveraged to bring stability to the region and to counter Hezbollah?
Thank you very much. This has definitely have been a very good partnership in terms of, not only in terms of economic partnership, but in terms of security. And I remember at one point, Hezbollah itself started attacking Cyprus itself because of this alliance between Israel and Cyprus, knowing that Cyprus have been doing both legal and security measures against Hezbollah. Cyprus has been a victim also of Hezbollah's terrorist activities. There have been some issues there. So this partnership has been very, very important. Hezbollah tried to use Cyprus as for its terrorist activities, and this alliance stopped it. So I believe at one point, we're moving. This is a moving topic. This is not something that is done. This is evolving every day, and I believe that there will be more escalation if Hezbollah is not disarmed, if the Lebanese armed forces, the Lebanese government did not initiate, serious measures again when it comes to disarmament. Israel will probably escalate. Israel might have another war with Hezbollah. We might see a different kind of ceasefire agreement, and these allies in the Mediterranean are key in securing this agreement.
So, in your testimony, you spoke about Hezbollah's efforts to empower the cash economy in Lebanon. Mm-hmm. What mechanisms should the United States pursue to disable the cash economy that is funding Hezbollah?
Okay. So the only entity in Lebanon today that is addressing this in terms of issuing circulars that are actually trying to regulate this cash economy is the central bank. But the central bank alone cannot do everything. Lebanon's government needs to have a very clear strategies when it comes to cash economy. So far, they are pushing reforms within the framework of the IMF. But the IMF reforms are very technical. They do not have a bigger socio-economic, political strategy that addresses the root of the issue. It's much more technical, and it's targeted against a certain part of these reforms. I think the Lebanese government should be pressured to have more an overarching financial reform sector, including, I'll give you just one quick example. The Council of the South has been getting funding from the Lebanese government for reconstruction. The Council of the South is the most corrupt Lebanon's entity, which has been getting money for reconstruction, and it's the only entity that has no oversight. This is an example of how to regulate the funding from the government and the cash economy, the cash companies as well.
Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the representative. I now recognize Representative Wilson for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank each of you for being here. And I was away a moment ago because this is Ukrainian week, and to me, to recognize the courage of people of Ukraine standing up, and it all relates, and that is that we're in a worldwide conflict of dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law. And so what an opportunity we have in the Middle East today, and I'm grateful to be here with Chairman Lawler. He is a proven friend of those standing for freedom. He even did better. His wife is from Moldova. So he has proven himself. With that in mind, I grew up appreciating the success of the Syrian Lebanese community in South Carolina, who've made extraordinary achievements in business, professions, and public service. In fact, we have a living example, not from South Carolina, but from some remote state called California, Darrell Issa, of Lebanese American heritage. As we seek for the people of Lebanon peace and prosperity, it's clear that the greatest threat are the mullahs of Tehran, financing Hezbollah, and I have faith President Donald Trump will work to cease the financing of murder across the Middle East. With that in mind, under the tremendous leadership of Ambassador Tom Barrack, Lebanese American, with President Donald Trump, the Middle East is transforming from conflict to opportunity. I was grateful in August to join with Senator Jeanne Shaheen, Democrat of New Hampshire, bipartisan, to see firsthand the transformation in Beirut, Damascus, and Amman. Additionally, we can recognize that in Lebanon, Hezbollah wields significant power to control military courts and prosecutors. I recently spoke to a prisoner inside of the Al-Ramaya prison in Lebanon, where Hezbollah prosecutors and judges jailed thousands of persons, Lebanese and Syrians, the vast majority who've been political prisoners who have been jailed for opposing the former murderous regime of dictator Assad. In November, a year ago, Dictator Assad correctly identified me as an enemy of the state. 3 weeks later, he moved to Moscow to be with war criminal Putin. And then 8 months later, I was in Assad's office with the new president, al-Shara, who I'm really grateful President Donald Trump has said, give Syria a chance. And so what progress is being made? With that in mind, for each of you, and we'll go from this direction, okay? For each of you, what can be done to push Lebanon to release the political prisoners, not only Syrians, but the innocent Lebanese who are there in the prison? And how can the Trump administration further push the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah to meet the objectives that were set forth last year?
Thank you. This is a really important issue. We should make it a priority. We should very clearly, publicly state our expectation that political prisoners be released. And Assad regime era people who are held in Lebanon should be returned to Syria and held accountable there. And with respect to pushing the current government in Beirut to complete the additional 4 phases of the ceasefire with Israel, we should make clear our expectation that our support is not unlimited, by time and has expectations for performance. The Trump administration has taken the correct, I believe, approach in providing continued support, equipment, and encouragement to the LAF, but it should make clear that it has expectations for timeline, enhanced, and accelerated performance.
Hear, hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just two things briefly, which is the political prisoners in Lebanon, political detainees, whether Syrians or Lebanese or other, are mainly, there's one main tool that is used against them, which is the military court. The military court is a very old system that needs to be abolished, as simple as that. The first thing in judicial reform is to abolish the military court, or at least seize the military court from dealing with civilians. That's how you protect political dissent. Two, this ceasefire agreement does not have a timeline. Without going into the details, this is #1 priority, is to ask the government to deliver a timeline for all the phases with deliverables.
Thank you.
I agree with my colleagues. I think actually one of them had a problem with a military court at one point in time, a civilian in Lebanon who was charged. This has to end. I think there's a whole bunch of new opportunities here vis-a-vis the political prisoners, but also because of the new cooperation between the Lebanese government and the government of Ahmed al-Shara in Syria. You have talks between the court systems about Syrian government providing information on Lebanese that the former government of the Assad regime helped assassinate in Syria, in Lebanon. Information being provided. There's a lot of room here. You also, the idea of Lebanese missing in Syria, who have been missing for decades. This is something I mentioned earlier. My friend Lokman Saleem, who was killed by Hezbollah, he worked on this a great deal. There's a lot of room here, but the United States government has to be clear. There's no room for political prisoners in ostensible democracies.
Thank you. Thank all three of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. I now recognize Representative Issa for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Hopefully that's the Lebanese 5 minutes. I'm on the clock. Look, I'm gonna start by asking an overriding question. Officially, is Lebanon a parliamentary democratic republic?
The answer is yes.
And is the structure, although it's an unusual one, perfectly acceptable if fully implemented as a functioning parliamentary democratic republic, including the 50-50 makeup of the 128 parliamentarians and so on?
I'm sorry, perfectly acceptable to whom?
To the world. I mean, in other words, when we look at democracies around the world, is the Constitution of Lebanon, for all practical purposes, a functioning, reasonable constitution if implemented?
From where I sit, yes.
Okay. From where you sit, is it fair to say that the Speaker of Parliament does not implement that Constitution, but instead distorts it so that it doesn't function?
The Speaker of Parliament is incredibly problematic and has been for 34 years now.
Right, I've only been here for 26, but yes, he's been there longer. As a result, I heard earlier, but I'm going to rhetorically ask you the same question. Do you support sanctions sufficient to make changes so that it can, in fact, be a functioning parliamentary democratic republic? I'm seeing a yes here. Can I get a yes from you, David?
I said earlier that the United States government should be sanctioning individuals in Lebanon who are obstructing reform, promoting corruption. I dare say he fits into that category.
And we sanction people like Gibran for wanton theft and so on, but we've left the Speaker, who has an incredible amount of wealth sitting with his relatives in Dearborn, and we've left him alone for generations.
I'm proud to say that I was the one responsible for sanctioning Gibran. So,
he's an interesting character, but he's still trying to figure out why, if he was the last guy to start stealing, he should be the first to be sanctioned. But notwithstanding that, you do, in fact, need to sanction. So as a result, two lowly Lebanese Americans, Congressman LaHood and myself, introduced last night, H.R. 7311, the Safe Lebanon Act, which in fact allows for the president, and we hope to have it considered by this committee, marked up and out before the elections, that in fact the president is able to sanction for all of these types of behavior, but particularly the question I have, the diaspora of Lebanon. I am an eligible Lebanese voter under the law, as are so many, more than 10 million around the world. But only a fraction will ever vote in those elections. We have been allowed to vote previously. Election law is currently pending, and they've changed that in a way that would eliminate the moderate vote that does occur from the diaspora around the world. Should we sanction if they are not allowed access to a fair absentee voting system?
I wrote about this in my testimony, and it is Nabi Berri who is obstructing electoral reform. 6 to 8 million Lebanese, or 10 million Lebanese expatriates.
$1.5 million here, and many times that in Brazil.
They're being disenfranchised, and this is something that shouldn't happen. Whether this is the reason he should be sanctioned, or whether it's for corruption, or whether it's for other malfeasance, we should be talking about that. Absolutely.
Now, I called for him to be sanctioned previously, and it was, among other things, corruption. Today, though, I only have two things that I'm looking at sanctioning for, and I'll ask your comments on it in the remaining time. One is the one that you've already answered, which is if people are interfering with the execution of a constitution that allows for a reasonable facsimile of a democracy, now that many of the outside forces are diminished, should we sanction? And then the second one, quite frankly, is do we need to have a form of tough love, which may include sanctioning, if we cannot get the Lebanese armed forces to risk, and I repeat, to risk a civil war in order to disarm a rebellion that has gone on for 40 years?
There is no risk of civil war. There is a threat of violence from Hezbollah if the Lebanese government tries to exert sovereignty. Whether we should be I don't think we have to sanction the Lebanese armed forces.
Cutting off the funding or doing other things.
We have plenty of leverage.
Anyone else in the remaining time that the chairman might give us?
I definitely agree with everything David said, definitely, and diaspora law will make or break actually the next parliament, so I totally agree with that. Lebanon is a functioning democracy, but we have a real problem with the electoral law, so I really need to bring up the electoral law to make sure that Lebanon elections produce a democratic parliament. Then we have to revisit the electoral law, and we have to make sure that the elections in Shia community, within the Shia community, are actually make sure that Hezbollah doesn't use violence during the elections, because
which is
this
why
is what
the larger
this is what they did last time, and this is where accountability and oversight comes in.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Weiss. I now recognize Representative Baumgartner for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is Hezbollah still in charge of the airport?
Hezbollah does not still control the airport 100% like it used to be. The airport is the main border entry in Lebanon that today is being regulated. There is a lot of Iranians coming to Lebanon who are not allowed to bring in their bags of cash inside Lebanon. There's a lot of oversight over this. However, the airport is not the only point of entry. You have the port of Beirut, and you also have the port of Tripoli, where most of the smuggling happens. And you have the borders with Syria, which the Sharia government is definitely stopping Hezbollah's shipment, Iranian shipment to Hezbollah, but the border is so porous, it's not demarcated, so the smuggling still happens there. Still a lot to be done besides the airport, but on the airport itself, there's a lot of work that has been done.
Just to be clear, You said it's mainly, so how much Hezbollah is still at the airport? 0%?
No, not 0%, but definitely from 100%, I can't say exactly how much, but definitely less than half of it. Like there's a lot of, most of the work is actually on the airports. But it also depends on who is present from the Lebanese security apparatus at that shift during that time. It's all about officers, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes they, depending on the person who's there.
Look,
but they're not controlling the airport per se.
Well, look, I love Lebanon. I enjoy the country very much. I first went to the Middle East in 1994 when I was a Kurz scholar to Jordan, Syria. Spent a lot of time there. Very much appreciate the good work the Hudson Institute. All three of you do good work and appreciate you. But you know, the challenges of Lebanon are many. As you deal with the Lebanese diaspora, it's just such an interesting group of people because they love their country so much, and yet there's so much corruption in Lebanon, and the diaspora does so much to keep that country from being successful, like in their own way. And I really want America to seize this opportunity, the international community to seize this opportunity to try to suppress Hezbollah and give it a leg up. But I struggle with the use of American taxpayer dollars with the amount of corruption and these games that have gone on for decades in Lebanon. And, you know, so to the members of the Lebanese diaspora listening to this, I mean, get serious, people. It's your country, it's your future. Act for the good of the people, not corrupt individuals. And you all know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to give a lecture, but Lebanese people know exactly what I'm talking about in this instance. You know, when I was in Iraq, we during the surge, we ran a number of operations to try to suppress the Iranian-supported insurgent groups taking over certain sectors of the economy in interagency fashion. Obviously, during the surge, we had a lot of ability to do that with the amount of resources. I look at sort of key metrics in Lebanon, one of these really being the airport on this thing. I mean, if we can't even get Lebanon out of securing the border, or Hezbollah out of securing the points of entry, it's really hard for me to say, let's put additional American taxpayer dollars into the country. So that would be number one. But just in the remaining time, if you could each give me the single most important thing America could do to suppress Hezbollah at this point in time in the country. We'll just go down the list. Dana, do you want to start?
Maintain as a priority implementation of all phases of the ceasefire and the verified disarmament of Hezbollah, but not just on the security file. We have to put more on the table to neutralize Hezbollah's social and economic penetration across Lebanon.
It's very hard to pick one, but I would say definitely more sanctions on Lebanon. We haven't seen sanctions during this administration. We've seen it before. And Lebanese react to sanctions. Yeah. Hezbollah doesn't react to sanctions as much as the Lebanese react to sanctions.
I got 40 seconds left. What's next? And I got one more question.
Yeah, condition the aid to the LAF. I think we can monitor that. We know where it's going. And we have to condition it based on performance. The other is to have the mechanism that's determining the ceasefire. Let's have them call balls and strikes. Let's see what the LAF is actually doing and accomplishing.
Okay, just a yes or no. Does Lebanon, should America be pressing Lebanon to write a new constitution?
To write a new constitution?
Yeah.
The current constitution, if implemented transparently and effectively...
So that's a no. Yes or no?
Not now.
Not now.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your good work. Yield back.
Thank you, Representative. I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we will ask you to respond to these in writing. Pursuant to committee rules, all members may have 5 days to submit statements, questions, and extraneous materials for the record, subject to the length limitations. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.